we went back and looked at how people choose the providers that they go to and tried to build a analytical way to look at that and build kind of the match.com for healthcare, if you will.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Cap. I got a really good one for you today. I got the co-founder of True Clinic and the co-founder and CEO of Patient Genie, software companies in the healthcare world.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you for being on here.
Of course.
Really appreciate it. And it's been cool kind of getting to know you the last little bit. You're pretty much related to me, I feel like, through
by association.
Yeah,
right?
by association with my in-laws and your sister. Right?
Yeah,
your
sister. Yeah.
They literally share a driveway.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you get any more close than that.
They're
But
close.
man, I've learned a lot about you. When I first met you, it was kind of here and there, maybe a birthday party, and then like you kind of. I wouldn't say you showed up at the wedding, but you were at the wedding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man,
anyway.
you're just like interesting. And I've heard stories. I've heard the really cool things that you've done, but I don't think I ever realized the scope of what you did. Because I've talked to my father-in-law, Mike, and he's like, dude, I had no idea. And I'm like, really? And it wasn't until that meeting when we were in Vegas, we were doing a Zoom meeting with you, and you said all the things you did, and I'm like, whoa. When you exited a company there was a huge number. So. What I want to get into is, I guess, I guess your story, how you came up, through and, became a business owner, a co-founder of a big tech company, how you got into tech. I think it's really interesting. Yeah. And just kind of go from there.
Yeah, cool. No, I appreciate the opportunity always. Right.
Yeah, anytime.
So let's see. I started my career, in tech, kind of started in that space, have an English degree, but that was just my fastest way out of school. After kind of being pre-law and
right. Where did you go to school at?
At Weber.
Nice.
Yeah, I transferred down to the U, and then went on my mission. Came home from my mission, took a job in Haugen, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to the U. Right? I don't want to drive all the way down there." So I graduated from Weber, and I went to the counselors, and I was like, "What's my fastest way out of school? Because I'm traveling full time. I just got married for the first time. I'm having kids, so it's like I can't go to school full time." So they're like, "Get an English degree." Like, cool. I'm an English major then. So graduated a semester later.
That's awesome.
So got stuck in tech, spent a bunch of years working for Intel.
Really?
And then transitioned from there into United Health Group. Kind of wanted to go into the healthcare space. And so spent some time with United Health Group for about 6 years. Got recruited into Microsoft out of United.
Okay.
And so they were starting a healthcare initiative at Microsoft, and it was called Health Vault. This is, like 2008, something like that.
Okay.
Went over to Microsoft. We had a couple of different products over there. Spent about 6 years at Microsoft doing tech, and kind of got to a point where I was getting burned out on kind of big Fortune 50 companies.
Right.
They have their own kind of culture, and I thought, I kind of want to do something on my own or do kind of smaller size companies.
Right.
So I took a couple of roles, helped a New Zealand company kind of build their North American sales organization and scale in the U.S. We had some products that we had acquired while we were at Microsoft, and we divested in those and spun some of those off and created a joint venture with GE and took the other half of those assets and sold them to this company in New Zealand, and I went with those assets. So we helped them kind of build their North American space.
Wow.
For a while, and then did another startup in Boston called Patient Ping, kind of helped them drive their biz dev and corp dev initiatives.
Right.
And then at about the same time, I'd done some work previously with Governor Leavitt, Secretary Leavitt, when he was at HHS in the federal government under the Bush administration. And after he left there, he came and created a boutique healthcare consulting firm here. And so I was talking to him and a couple of his advisors. This is probably like 2014-ish, something like that. And I was still working for Microsoft. We were looking for partners to launch the Surface. We were launching the Surface tablet. We were looking for healthcare kind of partners to work with on that.
Yeah.
And so he said, hey, there's this telehealth company that's here locally in town. You should talk to their CEO, their founder. So we ended up sitting next to a table at a conference that they hosted, ended up hitting it off. And he was like, hey, I could really use somebody with your background and your contacts. Would you come in as an advisory capacity? So I sat as an advisor for a little while, transitioned that into a full-time role. We kind of restructured the company, became a co-founder, and switched out of selling into the government space and went after the private sector.
Okay.
So we did that in about 2016. And then in 2017, we had got accepted into an incubator down in Miami healthcare specific incubator called Startup Bootcamp.
Okay.
There was us and about 13 other companies inside of that cohort. And one of those companies was a company based in New York that had a really cool kind of patient intake application. We had really great tech and a lot of customers, but really struggled on kind of building a tech team. And they had really excelled at building a really strong tech team, but didn't have a lot of customers. So we thought, hey, this is a great kind of opportunity to smash these two companies together and make something better.
Right.
And that's kind of my background, M&A, corp dev. That's kind of my space anyway, in tech.
Right.
And so we took both of those assets, merged those together, created kind of a new True Clinic, which is what we went to market with. Ended up being kind of awarded the best in class consumer telehealth platform in 2017.
Wow.
We got acquired in 2018 by InTouch Health, which was the best in class kind of enterprise telehealth company, right? So they sold robots and telestroke type services into the space.
Okay.
Met with their executive team, found some really kind of strong synergies between what we were doing on a direct to consumer front and they were doing on an enterprise front, and thought, how do we gain more momentum in the market by just taking these two companies that kind of are the same but aren't really serving the same markets and bringing that together? Because the request we were getting from all the kind of constituents in the healthcare sector was, we want to do telehealth, but we don't know what that means, right? And this is kind of pre-pandemic, right?
Right.
So we're, fighting legislative issues and we're fighting reimbursement issues and we're trying to kind of get adoption for telehealth in general. And then in 2018, they came to us and said, hey, look, let's smash these together. Let's do this. Let's go after this together. So we merged those companies together. I went and worked for them for a couple of years in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And then we sold that combined company. We quadrupled the size of the company at that point. We sold that to Teladoc, which is a publicly traded telehealth company in New York.
Wow. And that's awesome. And I heard that that sell was a pretty big, we don't have to get the details, but north of a B maybe.
Yeah, it was a nice deal. We were fortunate to be in the right space at the right time. It had grown. The pandemic was just barely kind of. We announced that acquisition at JPM, which is a big healthcare conference,
right?
In January of 2020.
Okay, so yeah, right before that.
Right before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we had negotiated that deal kind of really well to capitalize on anything if it had gone north. And then the pandemic actually, it was kind of a surreal moment after years of 7-8 years of fighting, legislation and everything else, to have the president be like, hey, everybody's going to use telehealth tomorrow, and having to completely pivot a company, where we had kind of strategic roadmaps that were built, and have to pivot that entire company to scale, right? And go from 4,000 visits a month to 4 million visits a month.
That's crazy.
2 months. Yeah.
Dude, that's insane. Do you what was that so I guess my question would be, how much did that propel you?
Yeah, I mean,
was was 4 million a month your 5-year goal, 10-year goal,
more like a 20-year goal?
Really?
Yeah, it was out there. Everybody wants it until you have it, right? And then you're in scramble mode trying to. We had a development team of 80 developers in Belarus. We had a development team in Argentina. We were just scrambling to just kind of build faster and deploy faster.
Yeah, sometimes when companies too much growth or too big of growth can be actually worse.
Devastating.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that with our company, we're always telling everybody, hey, we don't want to be the biggest, we want to be the best. And that's going to be through slow, strong, steady growth. And, as you get better, obviously you can acquire faster, but when you're not expecting it, and then, you're like you're saying, in 60 days, all of a sudden you're, 100,000 times your size, you're like, whoa, this is insane. That's pretty wild, man, to be able to go through that. But, a good transition time for you, to make that sale pretty much.
Yeah.
And then, kind of ride through COVID and, now you're developed Patient Genie. Because I know you're in the early stages of Patient Genie.
Yep.
I don't know what you can and cannot tell, because, I've signed some NDAs with and all that stuff. So I'll let you, kind of talk about that. But it is really one of the coolest ideas I've ever seen.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, we're open. We're in beta, right? Our direct to consumer products in the market. We started that company about 1.5 years ago. Spent a bunch of time in research and development. Went back to some of the investors we had, used for True Clinic, and a handful of new investors that we brought in. Still fundraising, always fundraising.
Right. Yeah, it's tech.
Yeah, it's tech. We're always fundraising.
Right.
And the market's been a little bit kludgy the last kind of 12 months or so.
Right.
And so everybody's in a little bit of a scramble mode, trying to get money raised and build a product. I'm fortunate, I've got some great co-founders in that organization. One of the co-founders was at True Clinic with me. It helped build that product. It's just a phenomenal kind of consumer product innovator. And so fortunate to have Alex and his team, development team on that piece. But yeah, we looked at the market, and after we exited out of the telehealth space, we wanted to kind of go back into the healthcare sector and solve a significant issue that all of us face, right? So, you move to a new region, your provider retires, you get diagnosed with something, you don't feel good, you don't know who to go to. Right. And today the modus for that is you go to Google or you search or you ask a neighbor or a Facebook friend for a doctor recommendation. Well, that's not necessarily always the best doctor for you. That's just maybe their best doctor or the best option that they chose. Right. And so what we did is we went back and looked at how people choose the providers that they go to and tried to build a analytical way to look at that and build kind of the match.com for healthcare, if you will. Right. And what we recognized was it wasn't something that you could do through an app or anything like that. We had to go back to the genesis of where people actually are searching for care, where I don't feel good or I need a new doctor. And that's Google today. Right. So what we did is we actually, Google or Bing or any other search engine, right? For sure. And so what we did is we built a brand new search engine. So similar to like a DuckDuckGo, we privatized search in that specific arena, specific for healthcare, and then have patents around how we match consumer inputs to a list of providers. We went back and kind of looked at all 5 million providers in the U.S., and that's everything. That's chiropractic, dentist, medical providers, RNs, PNs, et cetera. Right. And extrapolated that forward so that we can actually build a profile about those providers and look at their actual data of what they do in practice, right? So I'm an active guy. I've blown my shoulder up a few times. It's surgically repaired a few times. Right. There's some screws holding it all together. So I'm always on the lookout for like the best orthopedic surgeon that's a shoulder guy or girl, right? And so today, if I go to Humana to search Humana's website for an orthopedic surgeon, I don't get that level of detail. I get all their orthopedic surgeons, and then I've got to call them and say, hey, do you do shoulders or do you do hips or do you do knees? And so what we've done is take a look at what they actually do in practice by what they bill for. So we can then kind of match it to the provider that says, hey, I'm looking for a shoulder surgeon in Utah that's, board certified and, treats patients like me, et cetera. Right. And then we can generate that list of providers. And then if in the event there's no availability at those providers, because we have that algorithmic approach of looking at how the provider actually looks and what they do in practice, we can show you other similar providers that are like that provider that may not, or that may have availability for you to see.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, because it's tough. I mean, people are always looking for this and looking for that, or there's a level of anxiety going to even a family doctor or going to someone that you don't know. I mean, it's just because I've done that multiple times. Yeah. That you just Google them or you go on your insurance page, and then you type in and it just has a list of them that are, and it has you sort, 5 miles to 50 miles from you, and pick the closest person and go to them, and they're not really rated. You have no idea what they do. You have no idea. I mean, it's kind of a scary, not I wouldn't say scary, but like it's a level of anxiety that if you're going to get the good care. And then with me, I'm always like, am I going to piss the money away? Like I go there and I'm like, you're an idiot. I don't really want to talk to you. Or, like it's just it's interesting. We've I have multiple friends that have actually talked to me about this, which I'm sure is going to be cool for you guys to help that need, is for like therapists. Yep. Nobody. I mean, first off, it's really taboo to ask your neighbor or your friend to be like, hey, I know you go to therapy, unless they're like open about it, which people are more open about it right now. But you're literally just going to a website, Googling, therapy near me, and there is a billion different kind of therapists. I feel like everything, and really trying to find that person. I've had multiple friends that have kind of talked to me about it and been like, this is a problem. And I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't even know what that would be. Or, marriage counseling, well, is it specific to this and specific that? I mean, there's so many things. So to be able to provide that service where it's very detailed, where you feel comfortable, right? Where you go in there and it's kind of laying down an expectation. I know that you guys are kind of changing the healthcare game, and it's really, really cool to watch.
Yeah, I mean, mental health's a big thing, a big push for me anyway, right?
Right.
So, not only with Patient Genie, I have my family foundation that we focus on mental health gap grants,
Wow.
and so that's a big kind of thing that I'm interested in anyway. We'll continue to layer in mental health kind of tests. So we have an organization we're working with right now, hopefully soon, that we can button off that actually listens to your voice inflection and can pick up depression and anxiety inside of your voice inflection.
Really?
And so we'll use that as part of our AI in our application to say, hey, look, you mentioned that you don't feel good, you have an upset stomach or whatever the case might be, but from looking at and listening to your voice inflection, that might be kind of mental health related, not necessarily medically related.
Right.
And so let's maybe steer down a mental health path in addition to a physical health path as a course of action.
Right. And, back, even just a few years ago, I mean, that was just so taboo. Like
Right.
even doctors wouldn't be like, they were very hesitant on diagnosing anything,
Yeah.
or they're throwing medication every person's way, just writing scripts like it's going out of style. Right. And like,
Right.
oh, hey, I honestly just want, X. And they're like, okay, I'll just give it to you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy, but that level of care can just improve when people are like, oh, hey, like, and there's something out there that I can kind of talk to, or kind of, and they can hear it in my voice that, hey, we recommend this. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, they've got a really cool tech, right? And so that's really kind of what we're building with Patient Genie is I don't want to go build another telehealth company.
Right.
That was a good time, but I'm over it. I'll let the telehealth companies do that, right?
Right.
I don't want to build a patient navigation company. I don't want to build a care navigation company. I don't want to build a secure messaging company.
Right.
There's really great companies that are already doing that. So
Right.
what we're doing with Patient Genie is saying, hey, look, we'll take the front end of that relationship, so where the consumer is and the interest that they have, and we'll connect it to all this back office tech that's already been built inside of the system.
Right.
And so when you think about an ecosystem, that's really the play that we're building with Patient Genie by leveraging the consumer and that kind of that piece.
For sure. I know that you went to college for, an English, major, and then you've kind of been bounced around all over the tech world and in big tech, like Fortune 50 tech, and even bigger. Where did your healthcare passion come from? Was there an event in your life that you're like, I really want to go into healthcare, or was it just a conversation with a good opportunity?
Yeah, no, a little bit of both. So I
Really?
had left Intel, I was doing some work for them on the tech side. The tech bubble had burst in like 2000. It was time to transition. And I thought, I want to stay in tech, but I want to be in true tech. I want to be in an industry.
Right.
And so I looked at the different industries, and health was one that, I recognized significant need for tech. So I thought, that's got good job security. That's got some longevity
Right.
to
Oh
it,
yeah.
right?
I mean, people are always needing health, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like grocery stores, right?
Right.
It's not going to go away.
Right.
And so, so I looked for strong health tech companies, and this is back, I don't even know, 2002, 2003 or something like that.
Okay.
And that led me down the path of working for United, right, which is a big kind of health conglomerate, but they also had a tech company. It was called Ingenix at the time.
Right.
And so I spent a bunch of time at Ingenix, and then we kind of built, through some acquisitions and some other kind of activities, a bigger company called Optum, which is a functioning operational company inside of United. And so, it's exciting to kind of have taken that health path, because that's obviously steered my entire career.
Right.
And the startups that I've built have really kind of leveraged off of the relationships that I've built over those years.
For sure. You noticed, or you mentioned before, and that when you're working for those Fortune 50 companies, that you didn't love the culture.
Yeah.
And you're saying it was Fortune 50 culture. Let's get into that. Why?
Yeah.
What was the? I guess because there's always going to be pros, there's always going to be cons. What were the pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big pro is security, right? Like, you've got security if you're working for those big companies. Maybe.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I mean, we've seen them a couple come and go.
Yeah, it's a rating and ranking world, right?
Right.
Like, but I think the nice part about those organizations is it gives you a nice kind of view into the industry, into the market. You've got some security. You've got some, when I was at Microsoft, there wasn't a door that was closed to us, right? If we wanted to talk to Mayo Clinic, we could talk to Mayo Clinic. If we wanted to talk to Intermountain, we could talk to Intermountain. And so it was nice from that perspective, because the doors were always open because of the brand that you carry.
And pretty much unlimited reach.
Yeah. And the cons of that are that, nobody really takes you seriously because you're such a big organization. It's so hard to move because of the bureaucracy of those organizations, that it's just hard to kind of move them and pivot and be nimble.
Right.
And sometimes, especially in health, even though it's a slow moving industry, you have to have the ability to be nimble and adapt to what customers are looking for. Oh, and we felt that in the pandemic, right?
Oh,
like
for
the
sure.
entire industry turned on its head. The entire planet turned on its head,
Right.
You think about the evolution of DoorDash, think about the evolution of Instacart. You think about all those organizations that just exploded during COVID.
For sure.
Right place, right time, right vision, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to shift out of that mindset of being in a large corporate culture into the startup culture is very intense.
Right.
One day you're at the high of the mountain and the next day you're at the low of the valley, right?
Right. Especially when you're bootstrapping it.
Yeah. You don't know if you're going to pay employees next week or pay yourselves, right?
Right.
And then you close a deal and you're like, yeah, we're doing awesome. And then 30 days later, you're like, oh, we're not doing that awesome. Like, I don't know if everybody's getting paid today.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It's a struggle. And you're constantly, like I said, the hat's always off, right? You're always running around trying to raise money, just kind of keep the lights on.
Right.
But you've got a good idea and, you just try to execute as expeditiously as you can. And you align yourself with the best partners and the best people.
For sure. What is the biggest cash sucker in a tech company? Because I know a lot of tech companies, especially here in Lehigh, that have gone up and gone down and gone up and gone down. And but like some people are like, oh, it's just so easy. Like there's no cost of it's software. It's just there's no so there's a lot of confusion, I guess. And if people looking on the outside looking in,
everything costs, right? Everything has a cost. Time has a cost.
Right.
And that, I think time is the biggest thing that is a cost suck for small companies, right? I continually beat the drum of like, don't get distracted by shiny objects, right? Like know your mission, execute your mission, get it done.
Right.
And if you can incorporate partners that are on the same trajectory as you, all the better. But what ends up or what tends to happen is you get distracted either by a customer or by a partner or by an activity, a shiny object that takes you away from your mission, detracts you, costs you a bunch of time, costs you a bunch of resources. And in this world, there's just not a lot of forgiveness for that.
Right. How do you find good partners? Because you had, partner in True Clinic and you became you became a co-founder in the restructure of True Clinic and then you're founder and CEO of Patient Genie. And I know that you have a good team around you. How do you find good partners?
Experience. I think I have a pretty decent read on people.
Okay.
I've been fortunate. Not always, but I've been fortunate to be surrounded by really good, talented people.
Right.
And I think when you kind of find those good, talented people, you just kind of keep them in your back pocket.
For sure. What is the most valuable thing, what a partner can bring?
I think it depends on what exactly you want to accomplish, right? So for me, with co-founders that I have in current organization, it's balance, right? So I have my skill set. It's very focused on one side, right? I'm a business and a strategy guy. That's my background. That's where I fit. I'm not a product guy. I'm not a tech guy. I don't understand most of the things that Alex comes up with or how it works, right? It drives him crazy because I'm like, can't we build this? And he's like, well, I'll take this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, but can we build it, right? And he's like, yeah, but it's going to cost this much to build. And then we make the decisions we have to make. Right. So I think for me, it's about balancing your weaknesses. And those are the best partners that I've found, are the people that balance your weaknesses the best.
For sure. Do you have those conversations with him or her? Or I guess, do you have conversations with Alex that says like, hey, I'm not very good at this? Or, before the partnership happens, do you say, here's kind of what I'm really good at. Here's what you're really good at. Let's, because a lot of partners, there's a lot of like meshing together, a lot of fighting, a lot of people would say, do not have a partner. It's like everything you do, like partners suck. But I've met a lot of people that are like, oh, I want partners. Yeah. Like I hate being on my own. I hate, and I'm, I could kind of see both ways and I could honestly argue both ways.
Yeah.
But how do you set that like line? I mean, I know there's a lot of gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do you set that line where it's like, okay, you do you, I do me, and there's no like resentment for anything?
I think it's an exercise in cadence, right? I think you get to a point where there's a lot of times now, Alex and I have worked together for long enough that I don't have to focus a lot on the things that I trust him with. I think it really just comes down to kind of trust, right? And knowing kind of what their strengths are and what your strengths are and letting the other person have the autonomy and the trust and the respect to do what they're going to do. I think most people, at least in, I've managed large organizations. I've, been completely on my own and had full autonomy.
Right.
I think most people want to do well at work.
Right.
As a core, functioning principle.
For sure.
And if you give them the environment to do that, they will.
For sure. No, I think I couldn't agree more. Do you have any, have you ever had any like problems or a struggle with giving up?
Oh yeah.
Or,
I'm a
work
control
and
freak.
and
Sure.
okay. What are some things that have you overcame that, and how have you overcame that?
I mean, I'm continually we'll go back to the mental health thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm continually trying to get over that, right? I've got
Right.
a good therapist. It took me like 5 to find the one I like.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's a continual struggle. It's something, because I am that personality, right? I'm like, I don't need help. I'll just do it by myself. I got this, And so for me, it's been a continual kind of like ebb and flow of my own kind of balancing of myself, of saying, hey, I trust this person to do what I need them to do.
Right.
And then give them the leash to do that.
What has been the, through your journey, of self-learning, and what's been the biggest thing that's helped you or that you've learned?
To control the controllables.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest, all my friends, my family will be like, oh, there's that line again, right?
Right.
The very much, it is what it is, it just control what you can control.
Right. No, I love that because there's so much time spent on stuff that you can't control.
Yeah.
I see it in teams all the time, and in our team, I'm like, we can't really control the market.
Yeah.
We can do our best advertising, we can do our best, at branding and doing all that, but we can't really control it.
Yeah.
What we can control is our 4 walls and how we treat each other, how we operate, our bottom line.
Yep.
Whether the sales ebb and flow, our bottom line should ebb and flow with it. If we're, operating correctly. Obviously, if sales just crash, that month's going to suck because it's hard to do that quickly. And you were just talking about being nimble.
Yeah.
That's why we've chosen to have, smaller dealership locations instead of massive ones, because those massive ones are harder to turn a ship, right?
Yeah.
You got 100 employees in one area. Well, yeah, you could say it's easy to manage them and it's big, but then, something happens with all your sales. First off, you have all that property. And second, then you have 100 employees. Now you're trying to lay it, I like to be, surgic-like and very nimble. And, it's true. People just get caught up on stuff that I'm like, hey, just why are we talking about that? Or trying to fix problems they don't have yet. I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in where I'm like, wait, we don't have this problem yet. Like, no, then why are we together?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't function well in that space. It's funny, if we go back and talk to my co-founder at True Clinic, we'll joke around. We're still, really good friends.
Right.
And, one of the areas that we would butt heads is he would hypothesize on me. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? I'm like, oh, I can't control any of that, man.
Right.
Let's just wait till something happens. Then we'll deal with it when it happens.
Right.
And so it was always like we'd get frustrated with each other because he was such a futurist and I'm such a pragmatic, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, no, I can relate to that because I'm like, well, what if it does? But I honestly don't know because I never had that problem. So I guess we'll wait until we see. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of other things that you can move on. And again, it's just personalities, right? Like, I have a partner in the Haugen RV group and we're very alike. We're very different personalities and we're good at, he's really good at some things. I'm really good at some things. I'm not really good at some things and he's not good at some things, right? I know the RV industry a lot more than he does, but he knows, a lot of business stuff and a lot of relationships and real estate and different things like that. And he's one of the best human beings in the world. But we have to kind of call each other and talk about stuff like that. And we'll agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, like the most important thing with the partnership is just being aligned and on the same page, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's hard, especially when you have a partner, if you're afraid to have those conversations. Like I was just on a podcast yesterday that we were talking about how to have hard conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
With me, it's easy to say, hey, this is going to be a hard conversation. But at the end of this conversation, the point of this conversation is to be aligned. Yeah. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not trying to make you upset, but and then we can go in like, I didn't like how you talked to that person. Didn't like how you talked to me. Yeah. I'm not mad, but it's hard because people are really afraid to do that, especially in partnerships because and I've noticed partnerships that are like a majority minority, the minority is always in fear. you know, and I don't know that like, you know, and oftentimes it doesn't matter, but I've been, you know, consulting with a couple people that are minority and they just want to kiss the majority's butt all day long because, you know, most operating agreements is they can execute a buyout at any moment. And so that's a very weird dynamic going on. And some I've seen that are great. Like, you know, I've had, you know, minority partners in different things and I'm a minority partner in different things and I'm in no fear. And sometimes the best thing that they could do is buy me out. And I'm like, I would just want my money back on some things. But being able to recognize, you know, your weaknesses, I think is huge. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. So are you a believer in to kind of stick with what you're good at and just keep honing in and working at what you're good at? Or are you trying to learn like everything that you possibly can in so much detail that you're just brain overload? Or do you kind of stick in your lane?
I think it's kind of the middle. I would say in the past, I've been very stick in my lane. And then I went through a little bit of a genesis of, you know, I want to learn everything. You know, I want to manage and do everything on my autonomous self. Right. I think now it's a lot more balanced than that. Right. I recognize where my strengths are at. And I don't have to hone those necessarily as much. I kind of have hit my cadence or hit my kind of running at that. But my weaknesses are definitely pieces where I draw a lot more than I used to off of other people, and I really watch them and I see how they kind of tackle some of the things that I would do differently. And I try to adapt or learn from that rather than, you know, my past self would have been like, why are you doing it that way? That's weird. You know? And now I'm like, kind of like, okay, I kind of see how that approach would work as opposed to my, you know, bullish, like, you know, just come in there and like blow the world up and start over.
And it's like, if you're gonna give the autonomy, then give them the autonomy. You know, I tell people that all the time. It's like, you know, we have a rating system in our company of, you know, L1 through L5, and we have every employee rated on cultural and their KRAs. And, you know, L1 is a micromanage. L5 is pretty much, hey bro, how's it going? How's the family? You doing good? Yeah, you need anything? All right, see ya. I'll talk to you in a week or 2 or 3 or a month. You know, it's interesting when, or you're micromanaging people. And so people don't like to be micromanaged. I you know, but some people need it. But we like let them know, like, hey, like we're gonna get you through this scale to L5, right? And people that are L5 don't need to be micromanaged, but they need to be known that they're like loved. Because usually your highest performers are your easiest to leave because they can go somewhere else and get a really good paying job because they know they're a high performer. It's kind of the middle of the pack that's more of the job secure, and it's the you know, the L1s that they might work, might not, and are just trying to get through life, right? And so if we're doing meetings and, you know, I'm like, hey, like you're L1ing and L5, like don't stop doing that. Oh yeah, you're right. Like I got to stop doing that. And it's funny because, you know, we want to be held, like there's one thing about being held accountable, but then, you know, there's the one thing about micromanaging people. And when you know that you micromanage and that you're in there all the time, I think it's a good thing. But it's funny because there's so many people I meet with that, you know, I kind of talk about this rating system and they're like, oh man, like I never really noticed. Or I'm like, yeah, like when you're in a meeting and someone says something in a different department and you're like, and they're like, oh, I'll take care of it. And you're like, no, I'll take care of it. Just let them do their thing. Or tell them, hey, you don't have autonomy. Right. I mean, set that expectation. I think it's really important. But, you know, it's been interesting meeting with people all the time.
It creates such an anxious environment, right?
Both
for you as the leader and for them as the employee.
For sure.
You know, and I don't love that. Right. Like I, you know, there's times when you have to manage people. There's times when you have to manage people out, unfortunately. Right. And you kind of hope that there's a better fit for them somewhere else in that case.
We call it redeploying them in the workforce.
I like that. That's a nice spin.
Redeploying them out.
I just manage them out.
Right. Yeah. I like that too.
Good luck. See you on the other side.
Right.
But I think there's a leadership capability that exists in kind of managing people up. Right. And not managing people out.
For sure. So what are some things that you've been able to do in, you know, your companies and even, you know, prior tech companies that you've created a culture and a good team around you?
No, I think, you know, for me, it's about balance, right? I think that you need to humanize yourself a little bit as a leader. Oftentimes, especially early in my career, I got caught kind of just being a leader. And I'm like, hey, you know, I got this, right? I'm 24 years old. I know what I'm doing, you know, like get out of my way.
Right.
And I didn't have a clue. Right. And definitely burned some bridges and, you know, created some dysfunction.
I mean, you're young.
Yeah. And the hubris of that age. Right.
Right.
And so, I look back at those and I'm like, oh, yeah, I really messed that up. But I think for me, those learning experiences to then be able to kind of start to structure teams and create balance in those teams. One of the things I really enjoy doing with my teams as I build is kind of creating that human element, right? Like, let's get out of here on a Friday, right? Let's go play football in the park, right? Or let's go do something together. And it's not like the hokey kind of let's all have a team building.
Right.
It was just more so just to kind of say, hey, work's important. We all need to work, but at the end of the day, what's more important is why are you here, right? Are you here for your family? Are you here for yourself? You're just here to pay your bills? Why are you here? And really understanding the dynamic about each person on your team and being able to incorporate something that relates to why they're at work, right? Why it's important for them. I mean, for me, it's my kids, right? That's the only reason I do what I do is to protect them in the future.
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, that's why I do the companies that I do. I focus on healthcare because I know it. But at the end of the day, I just want to build a better system for them.
I love that. And it's important. Like there's a really good book out there called Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
And, if you give people a reason, which is funny because you're unique. I mean, I'm sure you know that because a lot of people don't, a lot of, team leaders or managers or owners or CEOs, whatever, they don't really care and pay attention to that. They might have a lot of self-development and my why and this and that, but they don't really, put it down to anybody else. But giving them a reason, like a mission statement, a vision statement of like why we're coming to work and, where we're going and the values that we have. I mean, is very important because people are on the same page, right? But if you're not giving people a good reason to come to work other than a paycheck, because what I've really found out, and I'm sure, you can attest to this, is I found out more people care about more than money, and they care about their quality of life, and they care about their culture and how they're treated at work more than they could care about money, because you have a lot of people that you're paying, good or bad or whatever, or people that are like, oh, hey, I don't want to really take you don't got to pay me right now because I just want to be a part of your team.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, why? And it's like, because I just really hear good things about you. And like, we can figure that out later. We'll just, I just want to be on your team. And I'm like, okay. Or people taking pay cuts. Cause there's some situations where they're, leaving huge organizations, massive organizations, I got a guy that one of the biggest companies in the world, Camping World, the biggest RV company in the world, Camping World, $4 or $5 billion in sales a year. Yeah. And they're leaving, coming to me saying, hey, I want a job. And I'm like, dude, I can't pay you. I mean, you're paid off of a region that's doing, $1 billion. Like I can't, I just don't have the revenue. Right. Like, no, don't worry. Like we'll figure that out later because, I heard you treat people as people. And like, I love that you just said, like, I bring in the human element, like you treat them like humans.
Yeah.
Cause there's, people that I know, that don't believe in that at all. I mean, they 100% are just, we believe in people are revenue, people are replaceable, don't really care. Which I'm sure like with you in the tech world, it's really hard to replace people, good quality people, and it's expensive. I mean, the cost on the other side is incredible.
Yeah. The disruption costs, right, of replacing individuals and team members is, it's huge, right? And so, for me, that's a hyper focus of just, understanding why people are there. Because you're right. At the end of the day, money's just money. It comes, it goes, it flows, right? Finding out that people are bought into your mission, bought into your vision, and are willing to grow with you. That's probably been the one big epiphany in the startup world is finding people that kind of buy in,
right? And
they're willing to grow, knowing that causes, in some cases, economic frightenings. As you're in the growth stage, because you don't know, right? And I think that finding that mentality of people that are willing to kind of take that risk and grow with you are the ones that will stick through. How
do you find people when you're doing a startup? Because there's I get asked a lot, like people message me or whatever, email me and say, hey, like I have a really hard time finding good people, quality people, and maybe maybe you're just a bad interview and you don't know the questions, but maybe it's down to that.
Yeah, I think it's a little both. I think for me, we utilize, some pretty top shelf kind of recruitment agents, a lot of referrals, and, fortunately I've been in the industry for a long time. And so I kind of know a lot of people, and I've got some referrals from a handful of people that have said, hey, this guy's solid, and they'll vouch for him.
That's awesome.
And so, we're at a point now where we're at that level. But, early on, we struggled. I mean, we cycled through a number of people. I'm trying to think back, back on the True Clinic days. I think we went through probably a 70% turnover rate.
Really?
Because, we were looking for something specific and just couldn't find what we were looking for.
Right. Yeah, we actually just engaged in a recruiting company, I guess you can call them, that specializes in this specific position that we were filling. And it's interesting. I mean, it's so much different than just putting an ad on Indeed. And like you get the people that you get is way different, and how they recruit them is way different. And, they kind of pre-interview them. They kind of sometimes cold call them and say, hey, I saw on, LinkedIn that you're this, this position. Are you looking for anything different? And, it's interesting, but because we tried it the other way, or different ways from referrals and different things. It just didn't really jive real well. And then we started using this agency from a good friend of mine that I've known almost my whole life. That she works there and good friends with the owners there, and they it's incredible. But they know how important it is to find good people. Yeah. And this position is one of the most important positions in the company, and we really need a really, really good person. And I've had a level of anxiety to the point that I haven't really wanted to hire this position. Yeah. It's a vacant position that hasn't been filled in probably six months in our company, that I'm like, I don't know what to do, because it's so important, but it's so hard to find that person. So, and it could be detrimental to the company. And you're paying him a big salary, and you're like, man, I just don't know how it's going to work. But, they have definitely taken that level of anxiety off, but it's because they pre-interview him about our culture. Yeah. So that's kind of what they've been doing, is this is Jason's values. This is Ryan's values. This is what they believe in. This is the company's vision. This is where we're going. This is it's all. And so they kind of prerequisite that, and it's helped out so much because we have a vision, and because we're, and a lot of people, we've had some people that are scared of the growth. Yeah. They're like, well, they all, especially, being a finance person, this, they know that when you're in the growth stages, when you're the least profitable, so there's the most risk. Right. Yep. And so finding those people that are willing to jump off that cliff with you is hard, but it's awesome, because when you're on the other side, or when you're jumping off the cliff, diving in the water, and you come up and you're laughing at each other, I mean, it's a magical thing, and it just I think it bonds people in a level of a relationship that you can't really get anywhere else.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, to follow on the theme of the podcast, right? Like, culture's key.
Right.
Absolutely key. With every company I've been with, I can point to why it didn't work or did work with certain employees, because they just want a cultural fit inside the organization. Right. So creating a culture that people want to be associated with and involved with is as important as finding the right people to fit into that culture.
Right. Right. Yeah. Which is crazy that people don't think that way, because they don't like to be treated. I don't think there's a human being on this planet that likes to be treated poorly. Yeah. But I'm like, why do they treat people poorly? Just because it's a business, like I understand, like, you don't have to be their best friend, and you're not riding dirt bikes with them every single weekend, and this and that and the other, but like, you can have a real relationship with them, still get the best out of them. Yeah. Because not that you have to be their best friend, but like, through our best friends, usually we get the most out of our best friends, right? They're willing to do whatever for us, and
sometimes,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. But like, and for me, like, it's easy, like, even family work. I work with a lot of my family. It's easy for me to have those hard conversations, which is funny, because a lot of people are the opposite. It's hard to have those conversations, but when you get too close to them, like, I'm kind of, I'm aware of when I feel like I'm a little bit too close to a person, but I'm not gonna be like, hey, I'm getting too close to you, I'm not gonna be your friend anymore. Right. I mean, there's a way to do things, and you can still be, their person they call if they're in trouble, their person that they call, if something happens, or, you have to have that level of trust where they know that you're going to care if something happens, right? Or like, if they damage, we damage trailers all the time. Yeah. And so call me, hey, we just totaled the trailer. Okay. Is, someone okay? What we need to do? Yeah. They need to have that trust in me, instead of the worst thing you can do is hide something from me. That drives me nuts. Yeah. Yeah. But implementing that cult, like, so what are some things that you've done? I know that, like, you have, but is there like meetings, and like, how do you keep that culture going? Because there's one way of like having a culture, and it's more than just coffee in the break room or energy drinks in the break room. It's, especially in the tech world. The tech is just unbelievable. Like, we've been looking for offices, And we've gone into a lot of these tech centers that are, they're moving up or whatever happened, or some of them going out of business. And you go there and I'm just like, wow, like I want to work here. There's like candy machines everywhere and ping pong tables and pool tables and half court basketball court or something. I mean, it's crazy, but there's so much more to culture than that. How have you been able to be so successful at that in tech? Because I know for people, it's really important.
Yeah. No, I think for us, it's interesting because when I went to Microsoft, when I got recruited to Microsoft, I was getting recruited by Google at the same time.
Really?
And so, went to the Google campus, did some interviews with them because they were doing some stuff in health too. And Microsoft was doing some stuff in health and they weren't really sure. And I was sitting in this weird spot where I worked for a tech company that was also a healthcare company. And so they were both in that kind of recruitment space. And so I interviewed with both organizations before I made the decision to go to Microsoft. And the Google experience, like they're culture kings, right? But it's very much like when you're Google, you're Google.
Right.
And it's changed a bit since then. But at that point of time, it was like, you come to Silicon Valley, you live here, you're at the office for 20 hours a day, right? If you want to sleep in the hallway, you sleep in the hallway. Like a very interesting culture.
Right.
I think for us, especially kind of post-pandemic, building a culture where you respect the work-life balance that people have is really kind of key for us.
Right.
Right. Like we all enjoy kind of being outside, and that's something that we, kind of connect on and associate to. I mean, I'm a capitalist at the end of the day, right? I want revenue up and I want the company running efficiently. I want to make money. I want to make money for my investors. I want to have another big exit, right? That's the plan.
Right.
But I want people that are balanced in their lives, not killing themselves.
Right.
And I think in tech specifically, especially in startups, we run into, issues where you have employees that want to prove themselves so much at a certain point that it creates difficulties in the environment because you have, coders or developers or whatever the case might be that are kind of solely focused on, look, I'm going to put in, the more hours I put in, the more valuable I'm going to be to the organization.
Right.
And that's not necessarily always the case.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's important to have that. How have you been able to balance a work-life balance? Because I know, you're the one starting them up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
you got amazing kids, met hung out with them all.
Thank you. Yeah. They're good kids. I'm fortunate from that perspective for sure. I think, I've failed at that miserably in the past, right? Where I've definitely taken my career first and that's been my priority. I think in the course of time and maturity, I've recognized how important it is to make sure that I'm not at work all the time or I'm not available all the time.
Right.
Where I do take time out of my day to say, hey, look, this is one-on-one time I'm going to spend with one of the kids.
Right.
Or a friend or whatever the case might be, right? To achieve that balance. And that's a conscious effort because, I'm the type of mentality and the type of personality that like, if I get stuck on something, I'm just going to stay there. Right. I'll zone everything else out. And so I consciously have to be like, hey, I've been sitting at the desk for 8 hours trying to crank through this. It's time to go do something else. Right. And that makes me a better manager. That makes me a better leader. Makes me a better dad. Makes me a better friend.
Right.
When I check myself out like that.
For sure. No, I was actually up skiing with my daughter today, and I was just I got 2 runs on the bunny hill, but I'm like, I've been one time since 2016, and my one time was back in 2020.
Yeah.
I went up with my daughter last year, but I would just, when they had a little magic carpet thing at Snow Basin, I'm just walking behind her, with the little rope or running in front of her, trying to catch her. She, I never really strapped it on and went up and did the thing. I forgot how therapeutic that is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I almost forgot how much I needed. I'm thinking, on the drive down when the beautiful, views of everything down Trappers Loop from Snow Basin in Utah, I was literally thinking like, man, when do I ever take time for myself? Because like me and Mikkel I won't say we were arguing. We were debating whether I should buy a season pass or not.
Yeah.
And, $200 a day. And I'm like, Mikkel, if I go 6, 7 times, I'm paying for the season pass. And she's like, you won't go 6 or 7 times. I literally pulled up my calendar and started counting how many times I could go. And I'm like, I probably can't go 5 times again.
Right.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. Like, why am I not saying, okay, like every week or every other week at least, I'm going to take between, 9 and 11 or 9 and 8. I mean, it's freaking 30 minutes from my house and go have Jason time or go up with a buddy or a client or say, hey, let's just go up there and spend some time together where I can just chill and relax. And, for my personality, the weekend is not going to be that for me. People could argue, hey, go during the weekend, whatever. Busy, miserable snowboarding is not Jason's cup of tea or anything. You know, I don't like to go, like my version of relaxation is not going to a crowd or not going to, you know, things that are busy, because like, you know, talk about mental health. I do have like a level of anxiety when that happens. Like I'm the personality that if we're going to the jazz, before I had like a parking pass and VIP stuff to the jazz, I would map how long it was going to be there, like 10 times a day to figure out, like I had just this stupid level of anxiety, but that's just me. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was coming down the Trappers Loop today and I'm like, man, like I need to do this for a team.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about it a lot, and like we get in this grind, right? Especially for this year-end push, and we've been doing a lot of things and updating a lot of things, initiatives that are going to launch on Tuesday. Yeah. Because we have to observe New Year's on Monday, because we at least got to have a day off, right?
Right.
And that's not gonna. It wouldn't be a holiday if you
got to get those days off.
Right. And I'm just like, man, I need me time.
Yeah.
And like I do go to the gym, but that's more of like a maintenance thing for my mental health. But it's so important to have that family time and that you time to be able to recharge, because there is a real thing. And the crazy thing about it is there are so many CEOs and owners and team leaders, or whatever you want to call people, that do that, but they have zero expectation of that, or zero empathy for their team. Yeah. Right. Their employees are like, well, you know, you can't take an hour off early to go to your daughter's dance recital. Like, why? You know, then they see them on Instagram and Facebook all over the world going on their, you know, they're playing or whatever, and always going to the dance and always being there and always going here and there. But like in my eyes, and this is just me, like people can totally disagree with me, and I'm sure I'll get hit up about this. But it's like, you know, so for instance, I don't know, I'm going on a tangent. You know, I had an interview with our HR generalist. Now she's our director of HR. She's phenomenal, probably one of the best human beings in the world. Yeah. And, you know, her biggest thing was like, hey, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she hadn't worked for a long time. She worked for a very large clinic with over 1,200 practitioners, and she was the director of HR over this whole company, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And then she had left for a little bit and kind of did a little bit more part-time, and then she hadn't worked for a little bit, and then she wanted to come back to work. And she lives like right next to our office. And so she's like, oh, this would be a good opportunity. Yeah. And her biggest thing was like, you know, hey, I want to get off, or have to get off like at 3 o'clock, you know, to go get my girls and go take them to dance, because their dance is kind of far away. Yeah. And, you know, I just don't really think that I'm going to be the right fit for the job. I'm like, no, you're the perfect fit for the job. Yeah. You value your girls. I value my daughter the same way. And then we started talking about dance. I'm like, my daughter's in it too. You're not going to see me on Thursday afternoon, because she's got dance at 9, dance at 10. Yeah. She's got tumbling at 4. I'm there. You know, I try to, you know, go around it, and sometimes I don't go to it all the time. But I was like, oh yeah, all I ask is like, maybe you have your phone on in case, you know, a employee gets run over by a truck, that they can call you. And she's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. I'm like, and she's like, I'll take my laptop. Hey, no, like at the end of the day, like I'm kind of like, I'm a cat. As long as there's revenue, as long as we're winning, you know, I know my HR is going to kill me, and you know, everybody's going to kill me, but I'm like, I don't care if you're in Tahiti, right? Like as long as we're winning, as long as we're making it happen, then why do I care about, you know, anything else you're doing? I know if you start to fail and there starts to be like a huge, then we have to have that conversation, which is easy, but it's, you know, what I value, I want everybody else to value. And like we have our culture cards, and I don't know if I've ever showed you my culture card in my wallet. So I'll show you that after. We have culture cards in our wallets that say our values on them. Yeah. And I'm like, one of them's family. Well, that's not our family in the group. That's your family. I want you to value your family. So I was like, you're the perfect fit. Well,
that's the most important thing, right? In most cases, that's why people are at work. Right. Is to take care, provide for their family. And so I'm the same way, right? Like if I talk to any of my employees and they're like, hey, you know, I got to run to this, or I got to go to dance, or I got to go to soccer, I'm like, go. Like there's nothing that's urgent that's going to, like, there's no fire right now, right? I know how to get a hold of you if I need you. Go take care of that. That's way more important than whatever we're doing.
Right. And, you know, it's kind of different, like, you know, a lot of our like technicians and shops and, you know, different things like that. But like just plan it accordingly. Like every manager knows that that's a value. So they know like, hey, you know, yes and no. Like if you're taking, you know, back to back vacations and you're all like, that's just, you know, it's different conversation. But you know, if it's an hour here, hour there, or like, you know, kids graduation, like growing up, like that was, you know, it was kind of normal for kids' parents to not be there if it's something like, you know, before 5 p.m. And, you know, it was like, and now this world, especially post pandemic, like you're talking about, it's just, the world has changed so much, and it's gone so virtual and gone so, but I think that, you know, and I don't ever want the mentality of people thinking that everybody gets a trophy, and like a good culture for the lack of a productive and winning culture. You know, you can still have a good culture, but at the end of the day, like you have to have the revenue and pay the bills. So we have to have that expectation. But I think having a good culture with that expectation of winning is an even higher level culture, instead of like, oh, we have a great culture and, we really care about anything. We have a good culture. Like it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. I think the pandemic kind of checked that down.
Right.
It shifted the way, it obviously shifted the way people work. It shifted the way people approach work. I mean, we see that, ad nauseum at this point.
Right.
I think, again, pendulum swift, right? Like we went all the way from one end of the pendulum to the other with pandemic. I think creating a balance somewhere in the middle of the two is
For sure.
probably the best work culture.
Yeah. And it's norm now to do like a Teams meeting or a Zoom. That's perfectly normal.
I understand it. And it, as an ex, telehealth guy, where I was like, hey, yeah, see your doctor on your phone, right?
Right.
And now we're 3 years later and everything's on Zoom, and I'm just like, oh, not another Zoom, right? Like I got to put a dress shirt on,
right,
over my basketball shorts on the bottom, right?
Right. Well, I even think like that. Well, and at least in our the world been in is like a lot of that like dress. It was funny. So I public speak a lot at these different conferences. Like I know you do too.
Yeah.
And like our circle and group of people it's not necessarily the clothes that you have, it's the shoes. And when I used to speak, I'm a huge shoe guy.
Yeah.
And it's not, I got my Louis Vuitton Rodravos right behind you right there. They're art pieces sitting up there. But when I was first starting out in my network marketing days, it was the most flyest suit, the sickest. No one really cared about your dress shoes, but it was how was the suit looking on you? What's the color, the shine? And then all of a sudden it was like a sport coat and jean type of thing, which I still wear all the time.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, I'll do t-shirt, jeans, but what shoes are you wearing? It's kind of funny that and even I've noticed, and I guess I never really paid attention to this, like the NBA, they don't really wear suits anymore. I'm like, what the heck? COVID didn't exist on the why did all of a sudden COVID happen and we don't have to wear suits anymore in the NBA? I don't know, just stupid stuff.
I struggle because healthcare is still a suit culture, right? Like if you go to a conference, 90% of everybody's in a suit, right? And then you go to a tech conference and nobody's in a suit,
right?
And so
you're dancing.
Anytime I travel, I'm like, wait, how tech is this conference versus how health is this conference? What should I be wearing? What's the other guy going to wear on stage? And it used to be the standing joke because I don't like to ask other guys what they're going to wear to certain activities, right? I'm just like, I'm a guy, I do my own thing, right?
Right.
But I've been caught a couple of times. So what should I wear? What are you wearing? You wearing slacks? Is this a slacks thing? Are we jeans? What are we doing?
You're trying to go on Instagram and be like, okay, what was this last year? Oh, let's see some pictures.
Yeah. What does business casual really translate to?
Right. Now, right. But I think that people post pandemic, that's really changed a lot of, I guess the physical culture of a lot of companies. Is we've realized how productive we could be via Zoom, phone calls, call it remote. And then how a lot of little things that we thought didn't really matter. Yeah. It's an interesting society. And even in Utah, we've gotten pretty laxed on our expectations of what people look like. Before the beards were a thing, and then tattoos and piercings, and now I remember going to restaurants and you really literally could not have a tattoo showing in a restaurant. Now you go there and people are always I wouldn't get hired, but now I'm it's kind of I think we're realizing people can be productive, and it's all about that culture, what culture you're wanting to create. And I know people have different opinions, which is perfectly fine. And I'm of the opinion that you can without crossing boundaries, is you can hire anybody you want to or not hire anybody you want to, whatever you feel the best fit for your company is. We're blessed we're in Utah. It's a right to work state, but as a capitalist person, I believe you own it. Yeah. You can kind of essentially do whatever you want to do. But it's been actually cool to watch because, I was using Zoom back in the network marketing days and people were like, wait, what I got to do? And especially with the older generation. And now everybody's got it downloaded. Everybody knows what's going on. Most things are done via remote, but it's just that creating that culture. And it's really difficult. I'm not going to lie, of creating a really good culture, 100% remote. Yeah. That's why, we have an office right now and I love it. And you're right. We went from no Zoom to only Zoom. And now we're really trying to find that balance of all that.
Yeah. It's funny because we had our telehealth company, True Clinic, back in the day. And when we got acquired by InTouch, they wanted all of us to move to Santa Barbara. And we were a virtual company already. We had an office here in Salt Lake with a handful of employees, but everything else was virtualized. Our development team was in Belarus. Our tech team was in New York, right? We were in Salt Lake, so we were pretty virtual already. And so when we got acquired, we're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. We're literally asking people to connect over the phone via video for their most important thing, which is their healthcare visits. Why can't we do that for work? Right? It's work. And so now it's, completely other end inside. So we're 100 true, or Patient Genie is completely virtualized, right? So Austin, Alex is in Austin. We're based in Austin. My development team's in New York. The other development teams scattered all over Eastern Europe, right? We're completely virtualized.
Right. It is a lot cheaper. I would say leases nowadays, or we've been going through offices. I'm not paying this, you know. And then we're thinking about building. Construction costs are crazy, and then you go into a building and TIs are nuts, and it's uber competitive. So no, landlord wants to do any TIs right now. It's just crazy. So, but man, I just really appreciate you being on here. This has been a fun, hour now. The last thing I want to ask you is, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, a couple of different things. So one is getting myself and my kids to a position where they're good, right? Whatever good means to them and to me, and that's the key piece. I think that's from an economic perspective, that's one of the things that I would deem successful.
Right.
I started my foundation, which is kind of my legacy company. That'll be the company that gets left to the kids. That focuses on how do we do better, right?
Right.
Like how do we, help people that maybe aren't as fortunate. How do we position ourselves in a way to help out those individuals that, at least at this point, we're focused on mental health. So, if there's kids or pre-teens, adults that, maybe are underinsured or uninsured, how can we help them get the mental health that they need?
Right.
And have cost not be a mitigating factor for that. Because, we're a first world country. I still struggle with why that's even an issue at this point in this country. It's unreal. So success for me is eventually would be to grow the foundation to a point where it's completely self-sustained and has longevity in that sustainment. And then obviously, personally, like, raise good people, right? Be good people, raise good people.
I love that.
So yeah,
that's awesome, man. Well, hey, I really, really appreciate you being on here. It's been a really fun talk. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.